Am I recording? What's going on, Excel fanatics? Verdexes here. It's been a while since I posted my last video, but I actually just moved into a new apartment and it made me think about budgeting again. And who doesn't love to talk about budgeting? So that made me think, why not make another budgeting video? You go, Verdexes. Thank you so much. So I have actually made a Verdexes budgeting video in the past. I will leave a link to that below if you're interested. So I'll be covering pretty much the same thing that I already did. Might add a little more jazz to it this time. But, I'll walk through how I made this template for you. So hopefully you can make this for yourself if you're interested. Otherwise, there's plenty of, there's Excel templates you can already use. There's other apps that are out there that you can use. But if you need something quick and easy, I highly recommend them. So these are made up numbers, but what I do as far as how I start this out is you look at your monthly income and you take your two checks. Most companies go by a biweekly payroll, and just take whatever your take home is, right? So this is after your taxes are taken out. So this is actually the amount of money that you get from your paycheck when you deposit that, and write that down. And just know that the total amount you work with a month in this example is $2,200. So what I like to say and like to do is come up with a minimum of 3 accounts. This will be the easiest way for you to manage your money. What I mean by that is one account, as I listed here, use that for your savings. So that'll be a small portion of your paycheck each month going towards your savings. Use that for emergencies, saving up for whatever it is that you want in the future. It's just great to have an extra stash on the side if you can. Again, each their own. I know everybody's situation is different, but just very important to think about that in the back of your mind if you're not doing that already. I think most people do, but if you're not, you should. The other part is make an account for just your fixed expenses, right? So what I mean by that is this is the amount of money you're getting charged each month that isn't going to change, right? So I have an example down here as the fixed expenses, and I'll walk through that, but I have things like your rent is always going to be this much this month, your phone bill is always going to be this much this month, Wi-Fi, electric, like things like that. So you have an account dedicated to just those expenses. You don't touch that for anything else but those specific expenses. So that's what I mean by the fixed account. And then the third one is your fun account. So that's just anything that is not being in fixed or savings that is left for you to do with whatever you want. So go crazy. So the thing is, the way this is set up for you, right, is I have percents here on the side. So there's a formula here that actually will multiply the monthly amount by the percent here. So the reason I have a formula there is if you decide that maybe you want to change something to like 8%, and then you want to make sure this is totaling 100, obviously. So maybe you want to do 32%, and just make sure that readjusts so that equals 100 no matter what. So the thing is, the reason that this is important too is I would believe most companies nowadays, I don't know what company wouldn't be doing this, but you have payroll options that will give you direct deposit. And it doesn't have to be just a flat amount. You can put a percent of your paycheck into an account. So the percent is a good method to go about it because say you're working overtime, maybe you're making more money certain weeks than you would normally, things like that. So follow the percent rule is what I would recommend. Okay, so that's my rant on accounts. So what I mean by the fixed expenses, I know I kind of touched on this already, so I'm just going to walk through the technical part of the formulas that I have here, right? So again, these are formulas making up the monthly total here. So you'll see B4 is the total of 2,200, which is the 2 net checks here. And that goes down the line. And actually for the fixed account, I actually have that mimicked here. So it equals this amount. And this total amount adds up everything that's in your fixed expenses here. Now, the examples I had that I mentioned, so that's rent, phone, Wi-Fi. The thing is, you could do groceries, say, if you wanted to include that in here. Go nuts. But the thing is, I feel like groceries can be very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very flexible in a way. Because you can find coupons. You can use this app called Ibotta. That's a really good one because that gives you rebates on food that you're going to maybe buy anyway. Like, say, the bananas. Maybe you'll get 25 cents for that. That's a good app. Highly recommend looking at that. That's why I didn't have it put in the fixed expenses. But otherwise, obviously, you couldn't include that if you feel like that would be a better way to do it. But just make sure that your fixed expenses aren't going to exceed what you're putting in your account each month. So that's what this difference box represents, right? So it's going to subtract what you're putting into your fixed account each month minus your total expenses. So as long as you make sure that this is positive, you're in good shape. So if this is negative, right? So if these expenses increase, right? So say I'm going to just include groceries, like I was just ranting about. Say I put in 170. So that's negative, right? So that's no good. So what I would have to either do is do something to reduce my fixed expenses, or I would have to make an adjustment to my distribution here. So what if we bump this to maybe 62? And we can't exceed 100, right? So we have to lower U. So that's how that would work. So that's why you kind of have things equal each other in formulas as well. So that way if you make one change, it'll adjust automatically to the rest of your template. So just keep that in mind for your fixed expenses, because that is very important. Moving down to your disposable income, this is your fund account. This equals B10, so that's what's left over. I have here for the 30% that I just adjusted. And what I do with this is I break it up into weekly and daily amounts. Now, when you look at the daily amount, nobody's going to stick to a daily amount. Like that is just, no way. But the thing is, think about that next time you're going to make a purchase, right? So if you're like, oh, let's go out to lunch today. And then you think about your actual daily budget, like, it just kind of strikes you a bit in a way. So it's not something you're going to stick to. It's your daily budget turns into your weekly budget. But it's just something to be aware of, like how much money you have available to your spend. This is part of living within your means. This is the things you need to be aware of. So really, you're going to be sticking probably to the weekly budget. So keep track of everything that you're spending in the week that's outside your fixed expenses, and then just jot it down, right? So say, I don't know, what month are we? December? Say you spent in the first week, spent $120. In this chart here, notice how this number decreased, right? So I spent $120. Let's say I spent $150. Then I spent, what am I up to? I spent $200. I got nuts. And then I spent $170. So the other thing here, you see how dangerously close I'm getting to $660, right? The thing is here, what I kind of added, what is it? On average, I think it's like 4.3 weeks in a month on average. So I added 5 as kind of like an additional buffer, just like I did with the daily, where I divided it by 31. That way you get a little extra room on months like February, where there's only 28 days, and some months where there's only 30. So it's kind of a buffer, but if you want to get more exact, obviously that's up to you. But this is just me giving you a heads up of how I would kind of work this out. So when you make your calendar year, keep track of your weekly spend, and just update that every week. And what you need to do is just make sure that the budget equals whatever your fund account is, and then make sure that whatever you're subtracting, right? So you have your variance here. Make sure that it's the budget minus the sum being weeks 1 through 5. And as long as it doesn't exceed that, you're in really good shape. So I know I already did this video again, but hopefully this was another good iteration for you. Hopefully this helps. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate it. And it's good to be back.